My name is Leanne and welcome to Vancouver Startup Week. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we're grateful to be virtually gathered on Indigenous land, regardless of where you're joining us from today. At my home here in Vancouver, I'm grateful to be on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish people. I'm privileged to live, work, and play on these lands. First off, I'd like to thank you all for joining us for VSW 2021 and welcome to our session, Futurpreneur. As I scroll, celebrating women entrepreneurs in food. This session today is hosted by Futurpreneur Canada and is part of our VSW Founder Track, proudly supported by Sage Accounting. Sage knows that you didn't start up your business to become an accountant, so they're here to help keep your business organized and running smoothly. Track your cash flow, send out your invoices, and get paid quickly. Visit the Sage Accounting booth to access free guides and templates for starting your business finances right away and gain an exclusive discount if you're ready to finally switch from Excel. I'd also like to take a moment to thank Futurpreneur Canada for being our event partner and a sponsor. VSW could not happen without the continuous support of our community sponsors. During the session, please be sure to drop your questions in the Q&A functionality within the Whova platform. We will ensure that our speakers are able to answer those for you before the end of the session today. Upvote the questions, and we are very excited for this conversation. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone over to our speakers and begin our session today. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to VSW for having us today. This is my second or third VSW. I've lost count, but I always love the week that VSW brings together and kind of convenes all of these incredible startups across Vancouver to learn from each other. So always really appreciate the events that happen during VSW. So my name is Nikki. I'm a business development manager at Futurpreneur Canada, and today we are going to be talking all about food. So I hope we have some foodies in the house joining us today. We've got an incredible panel of all women entrepreneurs who run food and food product-based businesses to learn from, to chat to talk about their businesses and their business journeys to date. A little bit really quickly just about Futurpreneur Canada. This is the third and final event that Futurpreneur is going to be holding today at VSW. So I won't go too in depth about us and our programs, but if you're curious, feel free to reach out to me or my team. There is a sponsor booth that Vancouver has, Futurpreneur has on the Vancouver Startup Week platform. So if you want to reach out to us, feel free to get in touch. I'll also pop my email into the chat box in a second as well if you wanted to reach out. But essentially, Futurpreneur is a not-for-profit organization that supports young entrepreneurs to start their businesses. So we do that by providing financing and mentoring support to young entrepreneurs between the age ranges of 18 to 39 to launch their business and get them off the ground, which is exactly what these three ladies have done and done so well. So it just so happens we are a national organization, Futurpreneur, so we support businesses across the country and entrepreneurs across the country. But it just so happens that here in BC, we have a lot of, we're a foodie province, I think, and we've got a lot of entrepreneurs that come through and start food businesses. So I really wanted to take the time to get to know a few of the entrepreneurs behind their businesses, talk a little bit about what it means to start a food business, and hear from some incredible journeys from these three women entrepreneurs today. So rather than me introducing you all, because you know yourselves better than I do, I'd love to invite you all three to just introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about your business to start with, assuming that no one knows who you are or who your business is. Give us a little bit about who you are and what your business does and the types of products that you make. And I would like to start with Eryn. A reminder, you'll need to pop yourself off mute to chat. Sorry, Eryn, for some reason I can't hear you. Can anyone else hear Eryn? Do you want to try again? No. Sorry. Maybe while you troubleshoot audio, And I'm not sure if we've got someone, a VSW person here to help troubleshoot audio. Maybe it's to do with headphones? No, you don't have headphones. Okay. Maybe while we troubleshoot.
Yeah, I was going to say, Eryn, next to the microphone, there should be a little arrow. Sometimes it changes what microphone it's using from your system. So if you just hit that little arrow, it should bring up all the different microphones that you can choose as part of your system.
Maybe while Eryn troubleshoots, we'll go to Monica. Monica, did you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Nelson, and I'm the founder of Raiz Holistic Nutrition. So we provide nutritional meal prep services to families, busy couples, professionals, and individuals that is completely customized to their nutritional needs. I am a nutritionist, and when I went to school, I found that the biggest challenge for people in implementing their meal plans was actually, or following through, was basically the implementation part. So that's basically how we help people in staying on track with their health goals. Prior to COVID, we also used to do catering and beautiful grazing platters for events and stuff like that. So hopefully in a near future, we can go back to doing that. So that's a little bit about me.
In-person events, don't we all miss them?
Sure do.
And your grazing platters, Monica, were just beautiful, were just gorgeous. Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Monica. I think Eryn might have just popped out and popped back. She'll pop back in a second, trying to fix her audio issues. But Mellisa, how about you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and Spread'em?
Hi. Is mine working? Okay, good. My name's Mellisa. I'm the founder of Spread'em Kitchen. We make a dairy-free alternative dips, cheeses, cashew-based spreads, and those sorts of things. We've been doing that for about 6 years now, starting in Vancouver. We're now available nationally in larger grocery chains throughout Canada.
That's amazing. And Melissa's had incredible growth, absolutely incredible growth with her products. And so which chains do you stock in, Mellisa? All of the big ones? Where would people find you?
Yeah, so you can check us out at Whole Foods, Save On Foods. Nationally, you can find us at Real Canadian Superstore, Loblaws, and soon to be in Metro and Sobeys as well. Those are some, but all the natural food chains across Canada. Your local regional ones, you'll definitely find our stuff in those
stock. That's awesome. Thank you so much. All right, while we're still waiting for Eryn to jump back in, let's just jump into the conversation here. I'm curious, what came first, the love of food or the inspiration to start a business for either one of you?
I guess I'll go first.
Go for it.
I have always had a love for food and for healthy eating. My previous career was in PR, and I remember always bringing like really delicious salads and healthy smoothies to work, and my coworkers would always be like, "Oh, what's that green goop in your jar?" So it's like my healthy smoothies and stuff. But yeah, I always aspired to like have my own food blog, like super inspired about like the food in the city and everything. And when I was looking for a career change, I naturally gravitated towards food.
Mm-hmm. So it was the love of food that really kind of inspired your business idea to start with. What about you, Mellisa? Was it food first or business first, or a bit of both?
I'm gonna say it was food first. I'll share some sort of more personal stuff just because I think that maybe people will find more value in the story beyond just like all the good stuff that happens in people's lives all the time. So I'll kind of go there. I grew up with a single mom. We relied on the food bank a lot for food. There weren't very good choices in a small town in Ontario when it came to food bank stuff. We didn't have cable, so we really were living by very little means. And so I used to spend, we had the CBC was one of the channels you get when you don't have cable. And there was a cooking channel called The Urban Peasant. And I remember that he was actually from Vancouver, and he would just say, use what you got, just get creative, have fun in the kitchen. And so we didn't really get a lot of stuff. So I remember I used to go in the kitchen and just use some of the canned things we had, and just play around in the kitchen with that sort of thing. And I felt like he really inspired a look at, you know, playing with food when you're a kid, when there's nothing really else to do. It was cold winters. My mom always made pork chops and mashed potatoes. It was got very boring after a while. So I was really inspired by him. Like when I'm talking like 8, 9, 10 years old, like very, very young. And from there, I actually got introduced to a vegetarian family that moved in from the city, from Toronto, or at the time, and they opened my eyes to amaranth and soups and vegan mayo. They had ergonomic toothbrushes, and they smelled like patchouli. And I was obsessed with their family. I like wanted to live at their house. And they took me to this health food store in Toronto one time as a little road trip called the Big Carrot. And I remember the smell of that store was just like no other grocery store smell you've ever smelled. And the things were so different. And I fell in love with plant-based food and vegetarian, vegan eating at that time when I was about 11 years old. And from there, I'd always just been trying to turn, because I tried to turn my family vegetarian, which didn't work, been looking to create recipes that were plant-based, but like meat eater recipes. And so that kind of like started the journey for me, I guess. I never thought about it being a business until I was, you know, many years later though.
Yeah, I love that. I think that funny that you shared about the vegetarian family kind of really inspiring you, and reflecting back, actually for me, I grew up vegetarian in a vegetarian household. And I think actually that my love for food has come very much from my mom cooking vegetarian meals, and really having to be creative about what we cooked. And I used to remember a lot of friends would come over to my houses and be like, "What is this?" You know, that would be so, it would be so like obscure to them. But I'm like, yeah, of course there's, you know, pumpkin on pizza, like that's, and zucchini on pizza. That's a totally normal thing. And I just think that like being vegetarian or being plant-based really pushes you to become a lot more creative with food. And that love for food kind of I think was instilled in me from an early age as well, Mellisa. So I love that story. Thank you so much. Eryn, we have you back. Did you want to test your microphone now?
I did do does it work now?
It does. It does. Welcome back.
I tested it when I got on, and then I guess it technology.
Oh, good. Oh, good. So tell us about you.
Well, my name is Eryn MacKenzie, and I own and operate in Vacanza food truck. We're a food truck in North Vancouver, serving fresh Italian foods. We make all our pastas and sauces fresh every day. My team's there right now prepping for our night shift tonight. I was inspired to open this on a backpacking trip to Italy last year, where I ate a lot of incredible, probably the best food of my life. And what inspired me so much was how simple all the recipes were. Most of my favorite recipes were 3 ingredients, but they just used the highest quality of ingredients, which is what gave it such amazing flavor. So I wanted to bring that back to North Vancouver. There's 2 distillery cocktail bars about 2 blocks from where I live. And while I was in quarantine, I realized that there's actually nowhere to eat in my neighborhood. We were constantly ordering food from Lonsdale. So I decided this would be the perfect time to bring something local for the people who do live in the neighborhood, also for the businesses in the neighborhood, because I really miss walking to a restaurant to pick up my dinner, and that kind of an experience, especially after having just had that while I was in Italy. So took a risk, rented a food truck for 6 months, opened up a food truck, and I just bought it out in January. So now it's officially mine, which is very exciting. I forget that it's mine all the time, but it is, which is great. And now we are in our, I think, 10th month of operating. And yeah, busier than ever. Also switching gears to do some more meal kits, and also dried pastas as well.
That's amazing. That's awesome. And it sounds like from your story, the combination of the question that I kind of asked as you left us and then came back was that's okay, was the question around kind of like what came first for each of the business owners. Was it like a love of food, or was it the passion and the want to start a business? And it really sounds like for you, the two were really kind of combined. Like you had this amazing Italy trip. You saw kind of an opportunity in the market, and you kind of combined the two. Would that be correct? Or
yes and no. So actually, I have always been obsessed with food. It's like my art medium in many ways. So when I was in the 3rd grade, I was like the weird kid taking out cookbooks from school instead of like Nancy Drew novels, and I'd like come home and read recipes, and then started making dinner for my parents and my brother. And then my mom's always been a huge cook, and so I've just been in the kitchen since I was a kid. So when I was growing up, I really wanted to be a chef. That's like the number one thing I wanted to do. And my dad, God bless him, is a very type A personality, and was like, "You'll never be successful in that. You should be a lawyer." So I'm actually a paralegal full time, and I still haven't been able to escape my love of food and that desire to open something. So when I first moved to Vancouver, I actually did menu consultation as a way to really keep up my creative energy, especially with food. So I worked with Wallflower and Perch, doing specialty diets, vegan and gluten-free baking, and those kind of recipes. And when I was in university, I worked as a baker. So I've always tried to like dabble on the side to keep the creative juices flowing. So this is sort of like the merging of my worlds this year, I guess.
that's amazing. Food always being a big part of our lives. It sounds like kind of across all of us, which is amazing. I wanted to chat a little bit about like kind of what Eryn brought up, and I think like Eryn, yours is the business that has started the most recently, I think. And so you launched during the pandemic, really, like once as COVID had hit, and kind of like in the middle of the pandemic. So I'd love to talk to you about that. But maybe we'll leave you a little bit till last. I'd love to chat to Monica about how the pandemic has affected your business and kind of the impacts of that. And I don't want to focus too much on it because everyone talks about this bloody pandemic. Let's get it over and done with now, and then we can get on to the funner stuff. But Monica, tell us a little bit about how it's impacted you and your business and the pivots you've had to make.
Yeah, it has definitely been like a constant pivot since the beginning. Our business, we started as in-home chefs. So we used to go into our clients' homes and cook from their homes. So I was very lucky that I already had a foot in a commissary because from my grazing platters, because I was so busy during the holidays the year before the pandemic hit, that I got a commissary space. So I was like so lucky to just like be able to move everything into the commissary and just started producing for our clients from there. And it was like I had already had the groundwork to start another kind of like meal prep service that was kind of a little bit less customized. So I actually ended up like, as soon as the pandemic hit, I'm like, this is the perfect opportunity to launch this. So I did it, but I had my client work, like our specific diets that we do, along with that more standardized meal prep service that I launched. So I was like running both simultaneously, and I ran myself to the ground within the first 6 weeks of COVID. And so our industry was still deemed an essential service, so we didn't have to close down. So while everybody was kind of like slowing down and having like time at home and everything, like I was just kind of like
busier than ever,
grinding. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So within 6 to 7 weeks, I decided to stop doing the individual, the more standardized service, and just focus on our clients. And we've grown so much during the pandemic. I think I started with like maybe 6 or 7 clients during the pandemic, and right now we have about a 25 client roster. Yeah, so we've grown a lot, and we've also had to like changed the way that we do things many times over. At the beginning, we thought like, okay, maybe because we're working from one space, we can just bulk the recipes up and align everybody in their menus. But we have clients with such specialized diets, like no onions, no garlic, vegetarian, vegan, and animal, so like someone who does no nightshades. So it would become very challenging to customize everything and making it bulk, and it would just like create room for error as well. So we just kind of like had to scale back. Like it's been as I mentioned, it's been a constant pivot. So we've kind of like gone back to the original way of how we used to do things, which is like one chef being assigned to one client, and then just like focusing on them specifically, just so like they can get like super acquainted with their dietary needs and restrictions. And it's been working. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Monica. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mellisa, what about you? How has COVID-19 impacted Spread'em Kitchen?
I would say positively. I mean, we were already a fast growing company. I think with COVID though, we had to make some decisions faster than we normally would have had time, in terms of, should we get a bigger space? You know, normally we might take 6 months to a year to decide, but I had to decide in 2 months. Okay, we're really scaling up from a 3,000 square foot space to a 20,000 square foot space, which is a big difference in how much rent you're paying. On top of that, you know, the orders were coming in so quickly that we had to upgrade machinery. So I had to make decisions on, you know, stuff that cost $500,000 in, you know, 4-week period. I had to make a decision. Am I doing this? Oh my God. You know, I've never really spent that kind of money before. And so I would say overall, it's been a really positive experience in that we are an essential service. We are providing nutritious food, but there's also all these like, you know, new experiences where we have to make sure that our team is safe, and we're abiding by the new sort of distancing rules and extra paperwork that goes along the way. And so when you're a smaller team, it is overwhelming. So we try to just kind of take it one day at a time, but I think we're almost on our way out of this thing, hopefully. So hopefully we just call it a fun learning experiment, and that's it.
Yeah, that's amazing though. Like companies that have kind of felt the push to just make those decisions a lot faster, I think, is really interesting, what we've been seeing through the pandemic as well. And Mellisa, I want to come back to you and talk a little bit more about your growth as a business in a second, and kind of like from where you started at farmers markets to a 30,000, did you say 30,000 square foot space? I want to kind of like talk about maybe some of the pivotal moments in that growth for your business. But Eryn, I wanted to just let you answer that pandemic question to start with. And I'm curious, like, what was it like starting specifically a food-based business during COVID-19?
It was really hard. I think, first of all, if it weren't for COVID-19, I probably wouldn't have been allowed to start this business in North Vancouver. So the district of North Van, where the truck's located, didn't recognize food trucks as like a valid business model. They said basically you have to have like a brick and mortar location or it's not a valid business. But with the patio permits that the bars were granted, they had to have a food option. And so we managed to kind of squeeze it in with the patio application. Once I rented the food truck, again, I wouldn't have been able to do that unless COVID had happened, because the guy I rented it from, all of his business for the summer was canceled with COVID having occurred. And your average food trucks anywhere from, like, there's 3 different kinds, but for the kind that we need, it's about anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 for a truck. So it's a pretty big investment, especially if you're just starting and you're not sure if it's going to take off or not. But so I was really lucky that I had that opportunity from COVID happening, and like I felt bad for him, and that, you know, his business was canceled, but it worked really well for me at that time. And then once we got all of that set up, everything's backlogged because people are working less hours or working from home. So trying to get the permitting done and all of my health approvals and all of that was also a bit more delayed because it was a challenge. And then once everything was good and we were up and running, I was still working full time and trying to get the food truck off the ground. I didn't really think it would take off until this time. When I first opened, I thought, you know, spring, summer 2021, we'll have a solid business. We'll have a good following. So, you know, it'll be nice and easy breezy up until then. I'll keep working full time and then I'll do this 3 nights a week. Except it was immediately busy because what we found was that people were just at home and eating, and the money they weren't spending on holidays, they were spending on food or takeout, and the money that people were getting from Serb, a lot of that was going to takeout as well, which worked great for us. The other thing was that I intentionally priced our menu lower than basically anywhere else in the neighborhood. It's kind of my dad always called the food truck like a pandemic proof business. But in that way, we were able to offer food to people who didn't have the same kind of money coming in, and also get to know our neighbors, which was really kind of a big deal to me. So that all contributed to it, both positively and negatively. And now my current struggle with it has definitely been in staffing, because we have so many people who've been either temporarily or permanently laid off from the hospitality industry. And a lot of them are at home collecting CERB, and you can only work X amount and still get CERB. So we've definitely had our struggle in trying to find people willing to work more full-time hours, or people who actually do want to work during this time. So that's been a bit of a challenge too. We've got a really amazing team right now, but it's definitely been probably my biggest challenge to date. And I'm starting to slowly get more time to myself rather than working around the clock. So yeah, both been good and bad.
All the unique challenges that it's brought, huh? But I think you touched on something that was really interesting, and just kind of, again, a reflection of like the landscape that we're currently living in, and what, like, I think Mellisa was speaking a little bit about this in our call previously as well, is that with everyone being at home and with everyone kind of having to stay at home, a lot of money is now being spent, where it used to be spent on holidays or going out or eating out, has been spent on eating in or elevating your at-home dining options, right? With maybe spread on kitchens spreads, or ordering takeout from your food truck, or investing in nutrition, Monica, right? And kind of like really getting serious about that side of things. So I think it's an interesting shift that we've kind of seen in food, especially. Appreciate that, Eryn. Mellisa, I wanted to kind of come back to you, and I mean, since like Eryn was kind of speaking about growth over the past, 10 months has it been? 8 months since you've started, and kind of the challenges that you're facing now. Mellisa, take us through maybe like a really quick snapshot of the past 6 years. I don't know whether we can do that in such a short amount of time, but maybe give us like a bit of a picture of where you started Spread'em, how you started selling, the community that you're selling to, and then the growth that you've experienced with the business up till now.
Okay, sure, no problem. Yeah, so I didn't intentionally start a business to have a business. I started a business to make some extra money so I could figure out what to do with my life. And so I think that is a really, the reason I mention it is it's a key point in how I continue to grow and run this business, as more of I'm building something and less of something that's mine with a legacy, as opposed to building something to sell or trying to make as much money as possible. That's not really my end goal. And that's why our ingredients are different, and that's why our price is a little higher. But I would say I started this with $500 on a credit card. I had absolutely zero money to my name at all. I owned a cargo bike at the time, and I was renting a place in East Van. And I was blending these dips at home in just a regular old blender, filling them by hand. I mean, taping. I couldn't even afford stickers. I was using tape to put the ingredients on the side. I was looking in alleyways for coolers. I didn't even buy coolers. You know, I really started this on a shoestring budget. And then from there, after my first farmer's market, you know, people we're giving you money. So I just put that money back into the business. I made $500 back my first farmer's market. So I put all that money back into the business, buying more containers and such. And then I just kind of grew. I bought a filling machine that was $3,000. I started in a commissary. I didn't really, when I got money, I didn't think about, oh, this is Melissa's money. I thought, oh, this is Spreadum's money. I didn't really pay myself. I bought enough for groceries and that's it. That's really how I started, gaining momentum. I think that's a really key point to make is I saw a lot of people in commissaries, they get $10,000 loan from somewhere. They go out and buy or lease a car. It's like, no, that doesn't really make sense. And so from there, I grew it to about $150,000 in revenue from $500 in my first year. My second year, I grew it to $500,000. My third year, I grew it to $1.5 million. Now this year, we're on point to make about $6 million in sales. And then from there, we're just trying to keep growing. And now a question for me now is like, what do I want to do when we get to be $100 million company? Because I really do see that we're going to be kind of going in that direction. And I think it's important that people who are starting businesses, they have two usually avenues. They usually look for capital or venture capital investment to help them grow. But I think it's important to actually take back your power, and you prove your concept. Let it take the time. That you can't rush things. Just like fermentation, which is like my main business, like you can't rush the process. You can't rush the flavors. You can't rush anything. If you do that sort of thing, you're giving something that is empty in the end. And so I always try to think about that same process when I'm trying to grow my business. It's like, what do you want at the end of this? You end up with a pile of money, you sell your business if you get the chance to, but is it empty, or did you have an opportunity to touch as many people's lives and to have an impact as much as possible in a positive way? I think that's really important to me, and I think it should be important to new businesses as well.
And what impact are you having too at the end of the day as well? I love that. I really appreciate that, Melissa. Thank you for kind of taking us through that pretty incredible journey over the past 6 years. I wanted to touch on something really quickly because you mentioned finances, right? And you mentioned kind of starting on a $500 credit card and really, really bootstrapping right at the very beginning, right? Shoestring budget, hunting down coolers and alleyways to house your products. You came through the Futurpreneur program, so you got a loan from Futurpreneur. Can you share with us how that impacted the stage of business that you were at right then? What did you use it for? How did you leverage the financing?
I used the money for a blender. So I was doing things in a Vitamix blender for far too long. And I almost quit my business because of it, because I was hand filling everything as well. So I used that capital to increase my batch size, to make my life a little easier. So I wasn't working until 3 a.m. and then waking up and going there at 5 a.m. again. I used that money also for packaging. It was basically my cogs. It was things that I was going to be able to turn into money. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't like things that you can't control or you can't measure. And I didn't go to business school. This is just stuff that seems to make sense. Like if you can see where your money's going, you can see how it's going to be returned to you. So I just relied on that money for those sorts of things.
The common sense things, yeah, absolutely. And the things that you know are going to make you money and kind of and bring that back into the business, right? And that's what I think, like from my role at Futurpreneur, that's what we get so excited about in terms of like seeing businesses come through and applying, kind of seeing the stage that they're at and seeing the impact that financing will really give to the business at that stage is really why we are here essentially, and really why we do what we do to help entrepreneurs level up and kind of get to that next stage of their business. That's amazing. Okay, switching gears, and I've just lost my train of thought really briefly. Okay, challenges. Let's talk about challenges a little bit. I mean, I think, Eryn, you talked a little bit about your current challenges in staffing and kind of what that involves, and you talked about kind of the challenges of your business model. We did have a question that came in from the audience, and I do like to kind of, if anyone here who's joining us from the audience has any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box, because I love to kind of bring the questions into the conversation at the same time as we're chatting, where it makes sense. So for example, one of these questions that came in is particularly for you, Eryn, and they said, what do you look forward to after COVID restrictions are lifted, and will your business model change once restrictions are lifted? And I think that's probably come from, you know, you saying right at the very beginning that your business might not have even been possible if COVID hadn't existed because of all this red tape, right? So what do you think about, when in the future?
So I managed to get the law in the District of North Vancouver changed, which is something I've really excited about.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, if that's my legacy, sweet. Which is that now they recognize food trucks as a valid business. So when COVID first started, I was able to kind of like, I got a temporary use permit was what it was. And it was basically under the umbrella of the distilleries that I was allowed to operate. I really hate that, because I'm very much like, no, you know, I want to play by the rules and I want it done properly. But that was just the reality with COVID. So I managed to get the law changed in the District of North Van. So now food trucks are considered a valid business. I do want to continue to challenge it a bit more, because the requirement is that, sorry, my dog's climbing on me here. But the challenge is that I'm only allowed to be parked in a loading bay. So because of that, our truck is parked in an alley at the moment between the two businesses. So I'm working with a couple people in the neighborhood to kind of make the alley something like you would see off Lonsdale with lights. I love the idea of getting like a food truck alley on weekends. So renting, Monica, renting out people's loading bays and just having kind of like a food truck area for people in the neighborhood, both for businesses and for all the condos in the area. So that's one of my goals. The second is to get a second truck. The one we have now kind of just sits there. I would love to be able to have one that's a permanent location, and then another that actually does the circuit. We'll go to other breweries, we'll go to festivals that can be hired for weddings. And then I've had 2 investors approach us for a brick and mortar location. So we're in the process of negotiating that a little bit, but I don't want to give up the food truck vibe for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. And like big kudos to you for helping North Vancouver change that legislation, that law. I mean, I think like in seeing entrepreneurs kind of come through the Futurpreneur system, one of the biggest challenges a lot of the time is this kind of red tape paperwork stuff that a lot of the, like, in my opinion, are archaic rules that that cities kind of put in place for new businesses. And so actually a lot of the work that I do as well at Futurpreneur is working with local municipalities and cities as well to try and not loosen the regulations, but kind of just open their eyes in terms of what are some of the roadblocks and barriers that might be in place for entrepreneurs to start businesses across different industries. So that's a great legacy to have, Eryn, even just kind of like changing that one law with North Vancouver. That's amazing. So if anyone's watching here and wants to start a food truck in North Van, there you go. You've got that behind you now, and Eryn's paved the way for you there. Monica, what are some of the, you mentioned some of the challenges kind of in a COVID context. If you were to start, how about I phrase it differently? If you were to start your business again, kind of clean slate, but knowing what you know now and having the learnings that you know now, would you change anything? Would you do anything differently? Are there some challenges that you might have approached from a different angle?
Yeah, I guess one of the challenges we're facing right now is because we customize our menus for our clients on a weekly basis, and I've had new staff come in. I guess like they're kind of like they have free reign to put anything that they want on a client's menu. So I think if I were, and this is something that I'm starting to do now, but if I were to do it again, I would start with base recipes that we circulate through and that we use as kind of like an overarching. We have like a recipe database for people to pull inspiration from and stuff like that. But I think that like having like true and tested recipes is very important in a food business, and our business is like very unique in that, like, because we are so customizable, we don't have specific recipes that are like costed to the T like any restaurant or product would. So our cost is also very variable. That's kind of like one of like the overarching challenges in the business specifically. So yeah, that's kind of like one of the things that we're working on. And one of the biggest challenges, honestly, is within our business model is scalability. It's really, really challenging to scale a business when it's so customized. So my next step in this is to go back to that less customized service, like more standardized service that I launched during COVID. But now that like I have chefs working on the client work and I can focus on creating that, that's kind of like the next step in scaling and growth for our business, because people still want healthy organic meals that are allergen free. So like the most common allergens. So like dairy free, gluten free, and then having an option to make it plant-based or animal based. That will kind of like be like the overarching theme of what the service will be, and keeping it organic, because people do place a high importance in organic in Vancouver. So, and like, for example, the fresh preps and our like meal kit competitors specifically, they don't provide organic. So I feel like that is kind of like a big differentiator for us, and specifically that you have already prepped meals and you don't have to do the work, which is what we find a lot of people still need support with that, in terms of like the time consumption that it takes away from them, like spending time with their family, or just like relaxing after a long day of work and stuff like that. So yeah,
working crazy hours and not having to do that after they get off
exactly.
work or get off calls all day.
And even like being at home stuck on Zoom all day, like people have been working more hours, and like they sometimes don't even have time to like in between calls to make themselves lunch and stuff like that. So you just end up working through the day and not eating anything. So yeah, we really
Eryn's like guilty.
Really
Me too.
in that way. Yeah,
that's amazing.
One of our goals is also to service people in Squamish. So
yes, please. I've just moved to Squamish recently, so let me know, Monica. Hit me up when you launch, and I'll definitely put some orders in. 100%. And I was thinking there's a great community up in Squamish that I think that you could really tap into. So yeah, let me know.
I've connected with a commissary over there already. So
okay, fantastic. Mellisa, same question to you. If hypothetically you kind of took the learnings from the last 6 years of running Spread'em and wiped the slate clean, and you were going to start and do something again, would you do anything differently? Would you would you do anything differently? Would you change anything, or would you do it exactly the same?
I think I would put a focus on people sooner. Not that I didn't ever value people, of course you do, but when you're on such a shoestring budget, it's really hard for you to be like, ooh, should I hire somebody and I want to pay them as little as possible, kind of ideas. That was the mentality that I actually started with. And then when I kind of blossomed a little bit more, because I didn't go to business school, I learned really quickly and I'd never even managed anything before. Like I was like really, really new to this sort of thing. I do have to thank all the employees that I've had to help. Some of them I had to, I guess you have to cut the trees make the path or whichever. But I would say that I blossomed from, just a solo, reckless person who started a business, who was just freeballing everything, to a manager, and now into a leader. I really do see myself as a leader. And I would say that my focus is 100% on the people. I mean, I pay them as much as I can afford to pay them, but I don't think of it as like an expense anymore. I think of it as an investment. And that was a huge mindset change for me. Someone who's come from very little to feel like you're invested in another person is a huge, I don't know, like breakthrough. And I'll tell you, I've had my staff for, years now. We are like a family. New people coming in, they always say like, wow, it feels like a family here. And we have meal share things. And when we have really big POs, I'm the first person to help with profit sharing or to jump in there. And we really do see it as, and if we become sort of offer shares, I think it's going to become a company that's like a B Corp style, even maybe partly owned by employees, so that they have something. Like I just don't think I could sleep at night knowing that all these people helped me build this thing. And then I am able to buy a house, say in Vancouver, and they're still renting, or they can't afford a car. I want to improve everybody's life that I happen to have an opportunity to do so, I guess. And I wasn't always like that. So I think having
been a journey.
Yeah, I used to be, because, when you come from very little, you're kind of like, oh, protectionist. You're kind of like, oh, an empty sack can't stand on its own kind of mentality, right? So I would say that having this business has really helped me blossom into more of like a good person.
And a great leader, it sounds like, too, Melissa. I really appreciate you sharing that. I'm curious, when did you first hire? Like, when did you make your first commitment to hire someone for your business?
Probably like my second year. My first year,
The first year was all you, just you.
Yeah, I was making it, I was delivering it, I was doing all the packaging, sticking all the tape on, I was hunting for new prospects in stores and handing out things. I was really like,
Hustling.
almost 18-hour days or more for an entire year. And then my first hire was somebody I'd worked in a restaurant with, and they worked with me part-time, just kind of helping me prep things and do that sort of thing. I remember I paid them $12 an hour, and I thought that was pretty good. And then I started, I think I had 3 staff for the first 5 years, only 3 plus me. So 4 of us. We really kind of pushed the limits on that. But now we have about 10
Nice.
people. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Amazing to hear that growth as well. We had another question come through from one of our attendees, and it's about right at the beginning of your business, and asking for feedback on what are some of your learnings that you think new startups should keep in mind. So I'm not sure whether this person is curious about starting their own food business. Maybe they are, but are looking for learnings that you could share with the audience about what are some key things to kind of keep in mind for a new business, food-based business that's starting up.
I'll go ahead. I think for one of my big learnings is definitely not looking at your profitability before you look at your labor costs. So when in the first year, when it's just you're like, oh, we're doing really well, very similar to Melissa. Everything that I was making, I was investing back right into the company. And building it. And every month I would look at our sales and be like, amazing, we did so much better this month than last month. And it was progressively getting more and more. And, QuickBooks is an amazing thing. You'd be able to see what went in and what went out in terms of expenses and profit. And it would slowly start to gap more and more. And in a very similar way, I wish I hired people sooner. I did the full-time job and running a business for the first 3 months, just myself with my mom's help because she's an angel, and my best friend. But so she helped me out a lot, but neither one of us was taking any money from that. We were just we would have a bottle of wine at the end of the day, and that was like our payment, which was great. But then as soon as I hired people, then I started looking at my profitability and realizing, oh wow, like labor eats up a lot. And then you kind of have to rejig things. Like, now can I raise my prices a little bit? And do I want to, how much can I pay these people and expect them to care about the business as much as I do? So that was definitely a big lesson for me. And then I've now started taking a paycheck myself, and as well as paying my staff. And now we're at a place, I think this is probably our second month where I can say like, okay, now we're actually profitable. But there's an illusion of profit if you don't factor in those items, for sure.
I like to add on to that, if I could, a little bit. That's exactly it. I think it's really the number one thing that you should do is figure out how to use Excel and actually put in Excel every single thing that you've spent money on. I don't know if it's date stamps, I don't know if it's gas, if it's anything that goes into your business. You should have a monthly tab on the bottom of all of it and take the time, give yourself 30 minutes and enter in everything. Don't let something slide, because then you'll really get a true idea of what it is you need to be making to at least cover your costs. And when you do that, one way to look at it is like, oh, it's scary, I don't want to know what that number is. But another good way to look at it is you see this number and then you can go out and find where you're going to get that money from, or like, you have that sort of reference, and then you can kind of like go out and earn that extra money, as opposed to it just being this vague thing that you don't know. That's my number one thing I would say. Know where your money's going, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add, Monica, in terms of starting a business, what you should do, or tips or ideas?
Yeah, I think Eryn definitely hit the nail on the head, is like accounting for your time. I think I always, like, for the first two years, I definitely kept like just like reinvesting the money into the business. And it was actually only been until my third year now that I've actually started giving myself a paycheck, right? So yeah, accounting for your time as an entrepreneur is really, really important. Equally as important is knowing how to delegate, and when to delegate, and when to bring people on. Like, one of my biggest milestones was when I hired a bookkeeper, and I didn't have to input everything in Excel on my own. Like, that was huge. And then like finally hiring someone to help me with admin and take admin tasks off my plate, because if I was in the kitchen 3 to 4 days a week, it meant that I was like away from my email and not taking care of like the business development side of things and stuff like that. So and then finally hiring someone to fully be in the kitchen, to take myself away from the kitchen, was huge, because now I can actually focus on the business development and on the back end stuff that needs to happen, like the vision, marketing, like training materials for the whole team, and like getting more funding, like all the things, right? Yeah, so yeah, I guess.
I think I love that, Monica, and kind of like really taking us through kind of like the different hats that you were wearing at different stages, right? And then delegating them when the time was right and you were able to do so as a business. I think what I was also hearing in that answer as well, kind of from all of you, is also knowing your strengths and your weaknesses as an entrepreneur too. I think, Monica, you were like, when I hired my accountant, you're like, I didn't have to do it anymore myself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, numbers are not my forte at all, so that's probably the first person that I would try and outsource my numbers too. So knowing your strengths and weaknesses as an entrepreneur as well, and hustling as much as possible to kind of put yourself in those areas where you will excel as well as an entrepreneur. And what do you love doing?
Add to like making sure that you do make time for yourself every week.
100%.
Honestly, like a game changer. I made no time for myself from October until probably like 2 weeks ago. But I actually got forced into a position of having to take time for myself because I had
you broke your leg, didn't you, Eryn?
I tore my ACL in February, so I've been trying to work with like a torn ACL, and now I've had reconstructive surgery in Squamish actually, but I can't walk, so I have had to rely on my team, and it's really forced me into a position of being still and present and taking time for myself. And the hard part with that is realizing, looking back on the last 8-9 months and being like, wow, I haven't taken a second to myself. And that was a really bad call on my part, because the mental burnout from that is real. And you can't be as effective in your business, in your marketing, in your creativity, and how you manage people unless you have something to give. And if you're constantly pouring out of an empty place, it's going to directly impact your business because it's directly impacting you as the backbone of the business. So even if like you have to be rigid with it, you have to be like, this is my hour to go work out this week or today, or this is my hour where I'm going to turn my phone off and I'm not going to hear from my staff. Or Monica's like, yes, from any of this, I need to just be present with myself and go for a walk in the woods. That's my favorite way to kind of get back and grounded. But I think that's a massive lesson to learn for anybody opening a business. And I would say, like, hold on to that with everything, because it will be a game changer for sure.
Yeah. And I think like I find, at least for myself too, is that creativity comes when you kind of stop and pause as well, right? Like if you're constantly, to your point, Eryn, like running out of burnout, the creativity doesn't come, at least for me, is when I stop and pause and have that chance to just kind of not be on screens all the time. That's when I kind of, those creative juices start coming, and I think of different ways to solve and tackle challenges and what's next. All right, I'm conscious of time. We've got about 4 minutes left of our call today, and I kind of don't want it to end because there's some great conversations that are happening. But I think my final question to everyone, and for everyone watching in and listening today, if you wanted to put a last question in the chat, or you wanted to reach out to one of the speakers, please do so now before we close. But my last question to all of our speakers today is, what's next? I'm curious kind of about where maybe the next year or your vision for your business is moving forward. We heard a little bit about Eryn's potential brick and mortar space, potentially another truck coming up. But I want to hear from Mellisa first. If you could share with us, what is next for Spread'em? Like, what are you working on? Maybe right now, but for the future as well. Where's your vision?
Well, we're currently expanding to the US, so that's a pretty huge jump for us, just kind of learning all about customs and how to export things. Ooh. So that's kind of cool. I also would like to have something like an innovation cafe, so somewhere where, because I am so creative, and there's just, we have like 15 products. There's just only so many dips and spreads that people can really eat, and bless Whole Foods, they have all of them. But there's just cool things that we do at the farmers market that I think people, regular civilians, would enjoy as well, when we were coming up with, like charred plum and just some really unique things. So I'd like to have sort of like a shared space, like a cafe type thing, where you could take something to go or you could hang out. And then I'd also like to somehow set up a little bit more charity. The food bank was a huge thing for me. I know there's like the Backpackers Club thing that they have as well, where kids get lunches and those sorts of things. So I'd like to see if I can get myself on a board, or trying to help somebody who has experienced that, because I realize a lot of people on boards of those sorts of things, they haven't really experienced what it is that kids really do need. And I think that I would have a lot of experience and be able to actually improve some of the systems for those sorts of things. So I guess that's where I see myself personally ending up, which seems so weird to me, because I just never even thought I'd go to university. I just didn't ever think I'd end up on a board of something. But anyway, this is a cool ride.
I love love that, Mellisa. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and being so open with us today. I love it. I will keep my thinking hat on if I come across organizations that are looking for board members as well. And maybe also, like, that's a great kind of segue that maybe we can incorporate into this question too. Vancouver Startup Week is a massive community, right? Like big community of startup founders, of investors, of people here who are supporting the entrepreneurial community. So maybe in your answer to kind of like what's next for your business, incorporate how we can help you, or how the community can support if you're looking for a board position, or if you need to fundraise, or if you simply want some more likes on your social accounts. How can we support you? How can we support the work that you're doing with your businesses? Monica, how about you go next?
Thank you for putting that out there. Yeah, for us, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I am in a place where we have like a pretty big vision for the next 3 to 5 years. I am originally from Mexico, so I am looking to expand our services to Mexico and other markets here in Canada, specifically Squamish right now, and potentially Kelowna or the Sunshine Coast. And but the biggest thing for me right now is I am looking for a partner in the business, someone who complements my skill set, potentially someone who can bring in some investment and is like really skilled in marketing and branding and positioning. Would be like a huge asset for us. And yes, we are definitely looking for investment. And I'd actually would love to connect with you further, Mellisa, because the cafe and experimental like incubator space for food businesses is something that I'm actually quite passionate about. A lot of people who have come through our company are starting their own businesses and stuff like that. So, and there's like a lot of people in the commissary space where I work in who like want to start like their own little things. And I just kind of like want to give back to the community and like create a space for helping people to grow their own food businesses. But I'm also, I'm really interested in speaking with you, Mellisa, because we're also outgrowing the space that we're in right now. And I don't think with COVID, I don't think we're going to go back to being in people's homes. Like there's going to be like a
shift,
an intersection of how we do things. And I would love to like have a space that we have dedicated for ourselves. So yeah.
That's awesome. See, that's what I love doing, is connecting people and brains and ideas and put, like, I'm all of the ethos of like just putting it out there, right, Monica? So you're kind of like looking for a partner, put it out there and see what comes back. You never know, right? So love that. Thank you. Eryn, how about you?
We touched a little bit on it before, and those are all exciting things for the business. My big thing right now is honestly getting better, which
Healing.
So I actually just recently, I kind of got to that crossroads myself where I was like, how sustainable is this? Especially when I'm trying to get better, and what are the resources I need for the business to grow without it being dependent on me always being available and around. So I actually just recently, I guess last week, hired somebody who his job is to make my life easier. And he's my lifesaver. He's texting me now, telling me all the things he's picking up that I need for the truck, which is great. But he's he's like my big project right now, and then that will free up time for me to be doing more of the marketing. We're getting the truck rewrapped in the next month or so, so getting some more focus on that, and then also kind of doing a new build out in it for placing some refrigeration and that kind of thing. But it's been really hard for me to manage all of that and then be on the truck and running the truck, as well as trying to juggle the day job at the moment. So I've actually just reduced my hours with my day job, which is super exciting. And now I will be yeah, I will be freed up to do some more of the business growth side. Kind of what Mellisa was saying as well. I really want to kind of have a charitable wing of the business. We opened up a food program during the first circuit breaker. If anybody needed food, they could come pick it up, and we were happy to give it away. And I kind of want to continue with that. I think, you know, it's one thing to do it during a time of need, but there's people who are always in need. So it would be, I'm just trying to figure out the best way to have that available to people if it's at a certain time. But that's a big thing on our radar right now too.
Just putting it out there, and absolutely no pressure, but I kind of feel like the three of you should put your brains on this. Collaborations coming, who knows? No pressure at all. But we really got to wrap up because we're running over, and VSW will probably get mad at us. But we've really enjoyed the discussion today. Thank you so much to Monica, Mellisa, and Eryn for sharing your insights, your experience, and your expertise today. And thank you so much for Vancouver Startup Week for having us. So I'll pass it over to you to wrap up.